afternoon, and thank you, Sarah. I also want to say cheers to you, Sarah, for keeping your great-uncle's innovativeness so vibrant. Now, I am indeed very, very honored to actually introduce Dr. Susan Desmond-Hellman. Sue is, I have to tell you, really down to earth. She is hardworking, and she's a very, very passionate person, and she's committed to innovating and transforming cancer care. She works tenaciously for the goal of converting cancer to be a manageable chronic condition versus the dreaded lifespan shortener or death sentence that it has been. Now, as some of you might already know, Sue has been much acclaimed. Just as Tom described David's awards, she's been acclaimed by many, many other publications too, including the 50 Most Powerful Women of Fortune magazine, the Forbes magazine 100 Most Powerful Women in the World. She was named Woman of the Year by the Healthcare Businesswomen's Association, and she also graces the Wall Street Journal's prestigious 50 Women to Watch list. Now, these are only a few. I could go on, and I really could go on. Now, for those of you who don't know Sue, I have to tell you that she's got a real story, and Sue is all about celebrating other people's accomplishments, and actually what she'd prefer to be doing is actually helping cancer patients. This fuss of getting recognized, she'd much rather not be doing it, but this is what makes the story a little bit fun. So, Sue was raised and educated in Reno. So, she's the second of 7 children and of very, very hardworking parents. Her father is a very popular owner of a pharmacy in Reno, and her mother is a retired English teacher. When asked if they had any inkling that Sue would accomplish as much as she has actually accomplished, which you're about to hear, her father, Frank Desmond, said the following. He said, "We're very proud of Sue," and without missing a beat, and in the same breath, he actually said, "I'm proud of all my children." And then, he went on to say, he spoke very fondly of expecting his children to make their own way, that each one of them had to work at it, and that they had to persevere. In addition to that, he gave me one insight into Sue, which I found very enlightening. And what he said is that when Sue faced with adversity, that was only a stimulus for her to actually supersede it. And he said that when she actually comes upon adversity, she just needs to sidestep it. Now, that being said, I have to say that in those few moments that I spoke with him, I gained a lot of respect for Frank Desmond. And I have to say, his wisdom, his egalitarian nature, and I really did understand the sense of character that he must have imbued in Sue and her siblings. Now, here they are together, and this is the first of Sue showing early signs of encouraging her team members to stay on task. Now, Sue's mother and father really did value education. They emphasized learning about science, and they emphasized learning about medicine, and they instilled a very strong work ethic. Sue worked through her teenage and college years through jobs as diverse as being a lifeguard at Lake Tahoe, in addition to being a baker. Now, some of you might know this, some of you might not, but I found this quite remarkable. I don't know how many of you have been bakers, and I have to say, one summer, she and her sister took on a position where she would report, for the sake of us being able to have hot donuts early in the morning, at 3 o'clock in the morning to actually bake these donuts. So it gives you a little bit of a sense for Sue's dedication to work. In her dad's pharmacy, however, working as a bookkeeper, she watched, listened, and learned from her father as he empathetically helped customers with their illnesses. Now, Sue knew early on that she wanted to be a doctor. And this is Sue playing doc, and of course she's got with her nurse and office manager. But you fast forward a little bit, and she went through her undergraduate and medical degrees at the University of Nevada, and of course in those 2 places she was valedictorian of her class. Now, after the University of Nevada, Sue went on to UCSF, and this is where she did her medical training and successfully snagged not only the chief medical resident position, but she also found her husband, Nick Hellman. Now, he too is a leading and distinguished infectious disease doctor who's working on tackling another devastating disease, which is AIDS. After completing her training in hematology and oncology at UCSF, she went to the School of Public Health at Berkeley, and where she did a master's degree in epidemiology and biostatistics. Now, her studies focused on the epidemiology of patients with Kaposi sarcoma. This is a disease that sits in the intersection of AIDS and cancer. These formative training years in these two programs were absolutely instrumental in honing her skills for what would become groundbreaking product development achievements at Genentech. Now, married and having completed their studies, Nick and Sue headed to the next logical place, Uganda. Now, the Rockefeller Foundation invited the Hellmans to conduct AIDS and cancer research and to teach at Makerere University. Now, what a package deal they got with this uniquely talented couple. Now, here they are in Uganda, and you can see, whoops, if you can go back one. You can see Sue had a real team of nurses and office managers and no longer had to play doctor. Now, after 2 years, they did return to the Bay Area, and only to find that, in fact, the positions that they had left were no longer available to them. So off they went to the next logical place, and where was that? Kentucky. Now, Nick grew up in Kentucky, and Sue went into a position where she was actually a member of a 2 oncology practice office. Now, during that time, this is where Sue's real tendencies in terms of helping patients came to get really formulated. She'll tell you that she found herself continually heartbroken, having to tell patients and their families all too often, "I'm sorry, we don't have anything else to try." Now, these experiences were frustrating for Sue. She was driven to help, not one patient at a time, but many, many patients, and her opportunity would in fact come. Again, in 1993, Nick was recruited to work in Bristol-Myers Squibb's HIV division, and again, they were a package deal. Both went off to Bristol-Myers Squibb, and fortuitously, for us in the cancer world, Sue joined the project team that was working to develop Taxol. She later became one of the biggest chemotherapy, which later became one of the biggest chemotherapy drugs. These were really heady times for Sue. She felt that she had found her true vocation. Now, soon after, of course, Genentech called, and home they went. When Art Levinson became CEO of Genentech, he refocused the company and truly invigorated the oncology program. He told Sue he wanted Genentech to become the leading cancer drug company in the world. A very bold vision. Now, when Sue looked around her, she confirmed that she was one of but a handful of oncologists at Genentech. But Sue took on the challenge and quickly rose through the ranks. She was determined to fight in the war on cancer. She now had a chance to fulfill her vision to develop drugs that would eliminate cancer as a killer. She had witnessed something similar happen in the AIDS field through her husband's work, of course, and the evolution of diagnosis of AIDS as a death sentence was converted to AIDS as a manageable chronic condition. So one of her ambitions for Genentech was to rewrite the medical textbooks. She wants Genentech to produce drugs that are so revolutionary, so different, that what you have to do is you get your eraser out and rewrite the chapters. And that's exactly what she's done, heading up product development at Genentech. Her colleagues credit Sue for encouraging bold, creative, and innovative thinking. They say that she fosters a culture that allows people and teams to flourish so they can innovate. She naturally incorporates the 5 competencies of innovation that Sarah's book outlines. She is constantly credited for her insistence and love of developing people. She is known to say, "Every employee deserves a great manager." Now, on this slide are several of the innovations in Genentech's portfolio that are breakthrough cancer drugs. I can't do them justice in the time, but I have to give you 2. One is Herceptin, which is now viewed as the example of the power of personalized medicine. You'll hear a lot about that over the next years. Herceptin became the first of its kind in therapeutic, a targeted therapy. It targets a specific breast cancer cells that express a certain marker, HER2. And what it did is it changed the old model, where in fact you had one drug for everyone, and regardless of their genetic makeup. With Herceptin, the notion of giving the right medicine at the right time, the right medicine to the right person at the right time was made absolutely a reality.